I always thought revenge would taste bitter. But as I watched my husband's face drain of color at our family barbecue, it tasted surprisingly sweet, like the lemonade I just splashed across his pristine white shirt. Accidentally, of course. My name is Sophia, and until 20 minutes ago, I was living what everyone thought was a perfect life. Funny how quickly perfection can shatter. Sophia, honey, you're making a scene, Peter whispered, dabbing at his shirt with a napkin while casting nervous glances at our gathered family members. I smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't reach your eyes. Am I? I thought that was Giselle's job today. I turned to face my cousin, who was trying to blend into the background of our backyard gathering. Isn't that right, Giselle? Want to tell everyone your news, or should I? The afternoon had started normally enough. Family scattered across our newly landscaped yard. The smell of grilled steaks in the air. My brother Killian manning the grill while trading jokes with our uncles. Even Peter's mother Yvonne had shown up, despite her recent hip surgery. Sophia. Peter's warning tone might have worked 3 months ago, before I found the hotel receipts, before I hired the private investigator, before I discovered the secret bank account. I raised my voice just enough to carry. Everyone, I have an announcement to make. The casual chatter died down as heads turned toward us. My wonderful husband and my dear cousin have something they'd like to share with the family. Giselle stepped forward, her face ashen. Sophia, please. We were going to tell you. When? I cut her off. After the baby arrives? The collective gasp was almost comical. Almost. Baby? Yvonne's voice cracked. Peter, what is she talking about? Peter reached for my arm, but I stepped away. Let's discuss this inside. No, I said firmly. I think we've had enough discussions behind closed doors, don't you? I turned to address our stunned audience. For those wondering, my husband and my cousin have been having an affair for the past year, and now they're expecting a child together? Surprise? Killian dropped his spatula. What the actual fuck, Peter? It's not what you think, Peter started, but Giselle's tears told a different story. Really? I pulled out my phone. So, these hotel receipts, they're not what I think? The secret account at First National, that's not what I think either? Peter's face went from pale to gray. How did you know about the account? Oh, honey. I patted his cheek. I know everything. I've known for months. I just wanted to wait for the perfect moment to share it with everyone who matters to us. Yvonne struggled to her feet, leaning heavily on her cane. Peter, tell me this isn't true. But Peter couldn't meet his mother's eyes, and that said everything. Penelope, my best friend who'd been quietly observing from the sidelines, appeared at my elbow. Come on, Soph, let's get you inside. No need, I said brightly. I'm not the one who needs to leave. Peter, you might want to pack a bag. I've already had the locks changed. You can't do that, he sputtered. This is my house, too. Actually, I smiled again. As of this morning, it's not. You might want to check your email. My lawyer sent over some interesting documents about property ownership when one spouse commits adultery in our state. The yard had gone completely silent except for the sizzling of forgotten meat on the grill. Killian finally moved to turn it off, the click of the gas knob oddly loud in the quiet. You've been planning this, Peter accused, his voice low and dangerous. Planning? I laughed, and it sounded foreign even to my ears. Oh, sweetheart, you have no idea. This is just the beginning. I turned to our gathered family members, some of whom were already hurriedly gathering their things. Thank you all for coming. Sorry about the drama, but I thought everyone should hear the truth at once. Saves time on gossip later. As people began to awkwardly disperse, I caught Giselle's eye. She was crying openly now, one hand pressed against her still flat stomach. For a moment, I felt a flicker of something. Pity, maybe, or remembrance of the summers we'd spent together as children. But then I remembered finding her perfume in my bedroom, and the feeling evaporated. Sophia. Peter tried one last time. We need to talk about this rationally. I walked to the patio door, then turned back to face him. We needed to talk rationally a year ago when you first started sleeping with my cousin. Now? Now we're going to talk through our lawyers. I paused, hand on the doorknob. Oh, and Peter, don't forget to check that email. The clock's ticking on your response time. I stepped inside, closing the door on their stunned faces, and finally let myself smile for real. Phase 1 was complete. Now for the real fun to begin. Tell me again how you found the account, Valeria said, tapping her manicured nails against her desk. 3 days had passed since the barbecue, and I was sitting in my lawyer's office, surrounded by manila folders and the smell of expensive coffee. I was cleaning his home office when I found a receipt stuffed in an old jacket pocket. It was for a safety deposit box rental. I pulled out my phone and showed her the photos. The bank's letterhead caught my attention because we don't have any accounts there. Valeria leaned forward, her reading glasses perched on the edge of her nose. And that led you to the secret account? The teller was very helpful when I showed up wearing my wedding ring and using his last name. I couldn't help but smirk. Apparently, Peter's terrible at remembering passwords. He'd recently requested a password reset, and they had sent it to our home address. Which you intercepted, Valeria finished, looking impressed, along with the quarterly statements he'd been hiding. I handed her another folder. There's over $300,000 in there, Val. Money I never knew existed during our marriage. She whistled low. This is exactly what we needed. Hidden assets during a divorce? Judges hate that. She paused, studying my face. How are you holding up? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. Another message from Giselle. Delete it, Valeria advised. Don't read anything from either of them unless it goes through me first. She's been calling my mother, I said, ignoring the message. Crying about family loyalty and forgiveness. Mom told her to go to hell. Good for your mom. Valeria stood and walked to her coffee maker. Want some? It's that Hawaiian blend you like. Please. I watched her pour 2 cups. Peter's mother showed up at my house yesterday. Valeria froze mid-pour. Tell me you didn't let her in. Actually, I did, and you'll never believe what she told me. I'm all ears. She handed me a steaming cup and settled back behind her desk. Apparently, Peter pulled the same stunt with his college girlfriend. Got her pregnant, then tried to hide money when she wanted child support. I took a sip of coffee. The girlfriend miscarried, and the whole thing got swept under the rug. Yvonne found out years later, but kept quiet to protect him. And now she's feeling guilty? More like angry. She brought me a stack of documents, old bank statements, letters, everything she had from back then. Said she's done protecting him. Valeria's eyes lit up. This establishes a pattern of behavior. We can use this. She made some notes on her legal pad. Has he tried coming back to the house? Twice. I have it all on security cameras. I pulled out my phone again and played the footage. Peter, drunk and angry, pounding on the door at midnight. The neighbors called the police the second time. Perfect. We'll add that to the file. Valeria set down her coffee. Now, about this charity idea you mentioned, it's still in the planning stages, I said, straightening up. But I've been thinking, how many other women go through this without knowing their legal rights, without having someone like you in their corner? You want to help them. I want to turn this mess into something meaningful. I stood and walked to her window, looking out at the city below. Peter's not the only man hiding money from his wife. Giselle's not the only woman who betrays family for a man. Speaking of Giselle, Valeria said carefully, her husband called my office this morning. I turned sharply. What? Apparently, he just found out about everything. Wants to coordinate our legal strategies. She smiled wickedly. Turns out Giselle has some hidden assets of her own. I couldn't help but laugh. Of course she does. She always was copying me, even as kids. This is good, Sophia. Really good. Valeria started organizing the documents into neat piles. But I need you to do something for me. What's that? Stop answering the door to family members bearing gifts. Even if it's Yvonne with smoking gun evidence. Everything needs to go through proper channels now. I nodded, understanding the wisdom in her words. Anything else? Yes. That charity idea? Start working on it now. It'll look good to the judge, showing you're thinking about helping others even in the middle of all this. As I gathered my things to leave, Valeria caught my arm. One more thing. Peter's lawyer called. They want a meeting. Already? My heart skipped. They're scared, she said, grinning. They know we have something big, they just don't know what. Want me to keep them sweating? I thought about Peter's face at the barbecue, about Giselle's tears, about all the nights I'd spent alone while they were together. Let them sweat, I said. We're just getting started. Walking out of Valeria's office, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. The game was on, and for once I held all the cards. My phone buzzed again, another message from Giselle. This time I didn't even look at it before deleting it. Some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. Some betrayals can't be forgiven. And some revenge is best served one calculated step at a time. You can't avoid family dinners forever, my brother Killian said, leaning against my kitchen counter. Mom's about to lose her mind trying to keep everyone civil. I chopped vegetables with more force than necessary. I'm not avoiding anything. I'm just choosing not to sit across from the woman who's carrying my husband's baby while everyone pretends to enjoy Mom's lasagna. Ex-husband, Killian corrected, and Giselle won't be there tonight. She's not welcome anymore. I paused, knife hovering over a carrot. Mom banned her? Actually, Aunt Rachel did. Said she'd leave the family if anyone invited Giselle to gatherings. He stole a piece of cucumber. Pretty badass for a 60-year-old church lady. The doorbell rang, interrupting my response. Through the security camera feed on my phone, I saw Penelope juggling 2 bottles of wine. It's just Pen, I called out to Killian, who was already heading to open the door. Thank God, Penelope announced, sweeping in. Traffic was horrible, and I needed to tell you something before dinner. She stopped short, seeing Killian. Oh, hey. Don't let me stop you, he said, grabbing another cucumber slice. I'm just here to convince my sister to come to dinner. Penelope set down the wine. You have to go, Soph. Everyone's talking about how Peter showed up at the country club with Giselle yesterday. My knife slipped, nearly catching my finger. What? They were having lunch with his lawyer. Penelope pulled out her phone. Someone sent me pictures. They looked cozy. I took the phone, studying the images. Peter's hand on Giselle's back. Her obvious baby bump now visible in her fitted dress. Both of them laughing with a man in an expensive suit. That's not his regular lawyer, I said, zooming in. That's Marcus from corporate acquisitions. Killian frowned. Why would they meet with him? Because, I smiled, Peter's trying to hide his company assets. Too bad I already have copies of everything. I handed the phone back to Penelope. Valeria's going to love this. See? Killian grabbed his keys. Now you have to come to dinner. Give everyone something new to talk about besides those photos. An hour later, I was sitting at my parents' dining room table, surrounded by the heavy silence of family members trying not to mention elephants in rooms. The lasagna is delicious, Mom, Killian said, breaking the tension. Thank you, sweetie. Mom passed the garlic bread. Sophia, honey, you've barely touched yours. Before I could respond, the front door opened. Sorry I'm late, Aunt Rachel's voice carried from the hallway. You won't believe who I ran into at the pharmacy. She bustled in, her face flushed with excitement. Yvonne, poor thing could barely walk with her hip, buying pain medication all by herself, so I brought her along. Peter's mother appeared in the doorway, leaning on her cane, looking uncertain. I don't want to intrude, she started, but my mother was already up, pulling out a chair. Nonsense. Your family. Mom shot me a quick, questioning look. I nodded slightly. Actually, Yvonne said, settling into her seat, I'm glad you're all here. I have something to say about Peter. The room went still. Even the ceiling fan seemed to hold its breath. I raised him better than this, she continued, her voice shaking. What he's done, what he's doing. It's unforgivable, and I want everyone to know I'm standing with Sophia. My father cleared his throat. Yvonne, you don't have to. Yes, I do. She turned to face me directly. I gave those documents to your lawyer this morning. Everything I had about Peter's past, his pattern of behavior. I'm done protecting him. Killian whistled low. Damn. Language, Mom said automatically, but she was smiling. There's more, Yvonne added. He's been calling me, asking about accessing his trust fund early, the one his grandfather left him. I set down my fork. The trust fund that doesn't mature until he's 40? She nodded. He's desperate for liquid assets. Said something about needing to move money around before court proceedings start. That's called hiding assets, I said, and it's illegal during divorce proceedings. I know. Yvonne's chin lifted. That's why I recorded the calls. The silence that followed was broken by Penelope's delighted laugh. Oh my God, I love this family. Later, as we finished Mom's tiramisu, my phone buzzed with a text from Valeria. Got Yvonne's documents. Peter's lawyer doesn't stand a chance. Meeting tomorrow? I looked around the table, at my supportive family, at Yvonne who chose truth over loyalty to her son, at the empty chair where Giselle used to sit, and typed back, absolutely, time to show them what we've got. Karma, I was learning, sometimes needed a little help from family, and mine was turning out to be better at revenge than I ever expected. He did what? I stared at Valeria across her desk, certain I'd misheard. Tried to empty the trust fund, she confirmed, sliding a document toward me. All $5 million, yesterday afternoon. My hands shook as I read the paperwork. But Yvonne said it couldn't be accessed until he turned 40. Exactly. Valeria's smile was predatory. He forged his mother's signature on the release documents. The bank caught it and called her immediately. Please tell me you have proof. Better. She tapped her computer screen. I have security footage from the bank. Want to see your soon-to-be ex-husband commit a felony? Before I could answer, my phone rang. Killian's name flashed on the screen. Take it, Valeria said. Could be important. Soph? Killian's voice was urgent. Giselle just showed up at my apartment. I put the phone on speaker. What does she want? To talk to you. Says she has proof Peter's been lying to her too. A pause. She's crying pretty hard, sis. Valeria shook her head violently, mouthing no. Tell her to talk to her lawyer, I said firmly. She says Peter's been moving money into offshore accounts. Says she found documents on his laptop when he was sleeping. Valeria grabbed a notepad, scribbling frantically, "Get those documents." Is she still there? I asked. Yeah, on my couch eating all my ice cream. Put her on. There was rustling, then Giselle's tear-filled voice. Sophia, please, I know I don't deserve. Save it, I cut her off. You want to make things right? Prove it. Give copies of everything you found to Killian, every document, every account number. He'll know I took them. He's already going down for forgery, Giselle. How much deeper do you want to be buried with him? Silence, then. What do you mean, forgery? Valeria nodded encouragingly. He just tried to steal $5 million from his trust fund, I said. The police are probably looking for him right now. A sharp intake of breath. That's why he's been acting so strange. He said we were going on a trip. Packed bags. He's planning to run, Valeria said loudly enough to be heard. With the money, without you. More silence, then the sound of paper rustling. Killian, do you have a scanner? An hour later, we were looking at dozens of documents showing transfers to accounts in the Cayman Islands. Peter had been busy. This is gold, Valeria said, organizing the papers. But we need to move fast. If he's planning to flee... Her office door burst open. Her secretary stood there, flustered. Ms. Valeria, you need to see this. She handed over her phone, showing a breaking news article. My heart stopped as I read the headline, Local businessman arrested at airport, attempted flight risk. Holy shit, I whispered. It gets better, Valeria said, scrolling. They found him with fake passports. He's being held without bail. My phone buzzed. Penelope calling. Turn on Channel 7, she screamed when I answered. They're showing Peter in handcuffs. Valeria grabbed her remote, flicking on the office TV. There he was, my husband, being led out of the airport in handcuffs, his perfect hair disheveled, his expensive suit wrinkled. I need to call Yvonne, I said, already dialing. Already with her. Killian's voice came through. She's actually taking it pretty well. Says she's relieved he was caught before he could do more damage. And Giselle? Currently throwing up in my bathroom. Morning sickness, she claims, but... The news anchor was still talking. Sources say the investigation began when suspicious banking activity was reported by his estranged wife's legal team. Valeria muted the TV. Sophia, listen to me. This changes everything. With Peter in custody and facing criminal charges, we can push for an emergency hearing. Get everything frozen before he can move any more money. Do it, I said, watching Peter's face on the silent screen. He looked scared. Good. There's something else, Valeria said carefully. The charity paperwork you asked about, it just got approved. You're officially the founder of the Women's Financial Protection Network. I tore my eyes away from the TV. Already? I rushed it through, thought the timing might be useful. She smiled. Nothing says I'm the wronged party like starting a charity to help other women avoid financial fraud during divorce. My phone buzzed again, a text from Giselle. I'm sorry for everything. The documents I sent, there's more where those came from. I'll tell them everything in court. I showed the message to Valeria, who nodded approvingly. Rats jumping from a sinking ship. No, I corrected her, watching Peter's face disappear as they loaded him into a police car. Justice finally catching up. The press is going to be all over this, Penelope said, laying out outfit options on my bed. You need to look strong but not vindictive, professional but not cold. It was the morning of the emergency hearing, 1 week after Peter's arrest. He'd been released on bail, but his passport had been confiscated. How about this? I held up a navy blazer. Perfect. Penelope nodded. Powerful but not aggressive. Pair it with the cream blouse. My phone chimed with a message from Valeria. Giselle just arrived at court. She's agreeing to testify. Well, well. Penelope read over my shoulder. Amazing what the threat of being an accessory to financial fraud will do to someone's loyalty. The doorbell rang. Through the security camera, I saw Killian with coffee cups and a paper bag. Breakfast delivery, he announced, walking in. Stress eating is mandatory on court days. Did you get the chocolate croissants? Of course. He pulled them out with a flourish. I also brought Mom's lucky scarf. I took the soft blue silk, running it through my fingers. She still believes in this thing? Got her through 3 cancer treatments and Dad's heart surgery. He shrugged. Can't hurt. Another message from Valeria. Peter's lawyer requesting last-minute meeting. Should we hear them out? No, I typed back. We stick to the plan. The drive to the courthouse felt surreal. News vans lined the street, reporters clutching microphones like weapons. Head high, Penelope coached from the back seat as Killian pulled up. Remember, you're not the villain here. Valeria was waiting at the top of the courthouse steps, immaculate in a red suit. Ready? Born ready, I said, gripping Mom's scarf. Inside, the corridors buzzed with whispered conversations that died as we passed. I caught glimpses of familiar faces, country club members, business associates, all pretending they weren't staring. Then I saw him. Peter sitting with his lawyer, looking somehow smaller in his expensive suit. Our eyes met briefly before he looked away. Sophia. Giselle's voice was barely a whisper. She stood awkwardly by a water fountain, her baby bump more pronounced under her modest dress. Save it for the judge, Valeria said smoothly, steering me toward the courtroom. Wait, Giselle called. There's something you should know about the baby. I turned, despite Valeria's warning grip on my arm. It might not be Peter's, Giselle said, tears streaming. There was someone else. The corridor went silent. Even the water fountain seemed to hold its breath. You mean, I said slowly, you betrayed not just me, but Peter too. She nodded miserably. Does he know? I told him last night, that's why. She glanced at Peter, who was now watching us intently. That's why he tried to run. He said he couldn't handle another scandal. Valeria checked her watch. As fascinating as this soap opera is, we have a hearing in 5 minutes. Inside the courtroom, our team took our places. Killian and Penelope sat directly behind me, Mom's scarf draped over my chair like a good luck charm. The judge entered, a stern-faced woman with steel gray hair. Quite the media circus out there, she commented, settling into her seat. Peter's lawyer stood first. Your Honor, in light of new information, my client wishes to propose a settlement. Objection. Valeria rose smoothly. Any settlement discussions should have happened before. I'll hear it, the judge interrupted, briefly. Peter's lawyer cleared his throat. My client is willing to admit to the financial misconduct and accept full responsibility, provided certain personal matters remain private. I felt Penelope kick my chair gently. Our signal for they're desperate. Valeria smiled. Your Honor, my client has no interest in Mr. Peter's personal matters. Our concern is solely with the hidden assets, forged documents, and attempted flight with stolen funds. The funds weren't stolen, Peter burst out. That trust fund is mine. In 2 years, the judge corrected, peering at him over her glasses, and attempting to access it early through forgery is indeed theft. I watched Peter deflate, saw the moment he realized everything was crumbling. Beside him, his lawyer was frantically shuffling papers. Your Honor, Valeria continued, we have evidence of systematic financial fraud, including offshore accounts and hidden assets. We also have testimony from multiple witnesses, including Mr. Peter's own mother, about his pattern of deceptive behavior. The judge nodded. I've reviewed the documents. Most troubling. She turned to Peter. Do you understand the seriousness of these allegations? Peter stood, straightening his tie. Your Honor, I can explain. Save it for the criminal court, she cut him off. This is a hearing about asset division and protective orders. And based on the evidence before me, she paused, reviewing her notes. I'm granting the emergency motion to freeze all accounts pending full investigation. I gripped Mom's scarf, feeling the silk warm under my fingers as justice finally began to unfold. All rise. The bailiff called out as we entered the courtroom for the final hearing. 2 weeks had passed since the emergency freeze on Peter's assets, and everything had led to this moment. Valeria touched my arm as we sat down. Remember what we discussed. Let me handle the questioning. I nodded, watching Peter and his lawyer enter from the opposite door. He looked haggard, his usually perfect appearance showing signs of strain. Behind him, Giselle slipped into a back row, her hand protectively over her stomach. Quite the turnout today, the judge observed, looking at the packed courtroom. News of Peter's financial schemes had spread through our social circle like wildfire, and nobody wanted to miss the finale. Your Honor, Peter's lawyer began. Before we proceed, my client would like to make a statement. Objection, Valeria stood. We're here for testimony and evidence presentation, not statements. Overruled, the judge said. But keep it brief, counselor. Peter stood, straightening his tie. Your Honor, I admit I made mistakes, but everything I did was to provide for my family, including my unborn child. I heard Giselle's sharp intake of breath from the back of the room. Mr. Peter, the judge interrupted, are you referring to the child that, according to submitted medical records, may not be yours? The courtroom erupted in whispers. Peter's face reddened. The paternity issue is irrelevant to these proceedings, his lawyer quickly interjected. On the contrary, Valeria rose. It speaks directly to the defendant's motivation for attempting to flee with stolen funds. She turned to the judge. Your Honor, we call our first witness, Yvonne. Peter's head snapped up as his mother walked to the witness stand, her cane tapping softly against the floor. Mom, he whispered, but she didn't look at him. Mrs. Yvonne, Valeria began after the oath. Please tell the court about the conversation you had with your son on April 15th. He called me late at night. Yvonne's voice was clear and strong. Said he needed access to his trust fund immediately. When I refused, She paused, collecting herself. He threatened to sell the family home, the one his father left me. Objection, Peter's lawyer shouted. Hearsay. The conversation was recorded. Valeria smiled. With Mrs. Yvonne's consent. Exhibit 47, Your Honor. The courtroom fell silent as Peter's voice filled the room. Mom, I don't care about the house. I need that money now. Sign the papers or I'll find another way. That's not what you think, Peter started, but the judge silenced him with a look. Next witness, Valeria announced. We call Giselle. The room turned to watch as Giselle made her way to the stand. She looked directly at me as she sat down. Ms. Giselle, Valeria began, please tell the court about the offshore accounts you discovered. I found the documents on Peter's laptop, she said quietly. He had accounts in 3 different countries. He told me it was for our future, but... She glanced at Peter. That was before I told him about the baby's paternity test results. Peter's lawyer was frantically scribbling notes, but I could see the defeat in his posture. And what happened after you shared those results? Valeria pressed. He disappeared for 2 days. When he came back, he had plane tickets and fake passports. Said we needed to leave immediately. Giselle's voice cracked. He never mentioned taking me with him. The evidence mounted throughout the morning. Bank statements, forged documents, witness after witness describing Peter's desperate attempts to hide and move money. But it was the final witness that changed everything. The court calls Marcus from Peter's corporate office, Valeria announced. Peter went pale. His lawyer grabbed his arm, whispering frantically. Marcus, looking uncomfortable in his expensive suit, took the stand. Peter approached me about moving company funds, he testified. Said he needed to create a paper trail showing business losses to avoid asset division in the divorce. And did you assist him? Valeria asked. No, Marcus replied. I reported it to the board instead. That's why they suspended him last week. I hadn't known about the suspension. From Peter's face, he hadn't expected Marcus to testify. Your Honor, Valeria said, we have one final piece of evidence. She held up a USB drive. Recovered from Mr. Peter's laptop, this contains emails detailing his entire plan to defraud not just his wife, but his company and the federal government. Peter stood abruptly. That's private property, Obtained through a legal warrant, Valeria corrected. Would you like to explain these emails to the court, Mr. Peter? He sat down heavily, the fight visibly leaving him. The judge leaned forward. I've seen enough. This court will take a 1-hour recess before delivering its ruling. She fixed Peter with a stern look. I suggest you use this time to consider your position very carefully. As the bailiff let us out, I caught Yvonne's eye. She nodded once, tears streaming down her face. The truth had finally come out, and there was no hiding from it anymore. The court finds in favor of the plaintiff. The judge's voice rang out across the hushed courtroom. Mr. Peters' attempts to conceal and transfer assets during divorce proceedings show a clear pattern of fraudulent behavior. I gripped Valeria's hand under the table as the judge continued. Furthermore, the evidence of attempted flight with stolen funds, corporate fraud, and document forgery will be referred to the district attorney's office for criminal prosecution. She peered over her glasses at Peter. You're fortunate this is just a civil proceeding, Mr. Peter. Peter's lawyer stood. Your Honor, we request... Denied. She cut him off. I'm not finished. She shuffled her papers. All marital assets are to be divided as follows. The next few minutes were a blur of numbers and percentages. 70% of all assets to me. The house. Both cars. Full access to all accounts, including the offshore ones once they were recovered. Additionally, the judge continued, given Mr. Peters' attempts to defraud his employer, this court orders him to resign from his executive position and surrender all company shares as part of the settlement. Peter jumped up. You can't do that. Those shares are worth millions. Sit down, his lawyer hissed, pulling at his sleeve. Actually, I can, the judge replied calmly, and I am. Perhaps you should have considered the consequences before attempting to use company resources for personal fraud. Penelope squeezed my shoulder from behind. I could feel her grinning. Finally, the judge said, regarding the matter of Mrs. Sophia's newly established Women's Financial Protection Network. She actually smiled. The court views this initiative as a commendable response to personal adversity. Therefore, I'm ordering that 20% of the recovered offshore funds be directed to the Foundation's endowment. Valeria's grip on my hand tightened. We hadn't even asked for that. Your Honor, Peter's lawyer tried one last time. My client wishes to appeal. On what grounds? The judge interrupted. The evidence is overwhelming. Your client committed fraud, attempted to flee the country, and tried to hide millions in assets. He's lucky I'm not having him taken into custody right now. She banged her gavel. This ruling is final. Court adjourned. The room erupted in movement and whispers. I stayed seated, watching Peter slump in his chair as his lawyer frantically whispered in his ear. Sophia? Valeria nudged me. Look. Giselle was approaching Peter, one hand still on her stomach. I thought you should know, I heard her say. I'm naming him after his real father. Peter's face crumpled. You said you weren't sure. The new test results came back yesterday. She placed an envelope on the table in front of him. Goodbye, Peter. As she walked away, she paused by my chair. Sophia, She started. Don't, I said quietly. Just do better from now on. She nodded and left, her heels clicking against the courtroom floor. Yvonne approached next, leaning heavily on her cane. Peter, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Your father would be so ashamed. Mom, please. No, she straightened up. You're my son, and I love you. But until you make this right, really right, don't come to the house. She turned to me. Sunday dinner this week? I nodded, fighting back tears. I'll bring dessert. As the courtroom cleared, Killian appeared at my side. Ready to face the press outside? Actually, Valeria interjected, we're taking the back exit. I have a surprise. She led us through a service corridor to the rear of the courthouse. There, gathered on the steps, were dozens of women, all holding signs supporting the Women's Financial Protection Network. Who are they? I whispered. Women you're going to help. Valeria smiled. They've been following your case. You're giving them hope, Sophia. One woman stepped forward. My husband tried the same thing last year, she said. I lost everything because I didn't know my rights. What you're doing, it matters. Penelope pulled out her phone. Smile, Sophia. This is going viral in the best way possible. As cameras flashed and women shared their stories, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about change, about turning pain into purpose. Sophia, Valeria said softly, the network's website just went live. We already have 50 requests for help. I looked back through the courthouse window, where Peter sat alone at the defendant's table, head in his hands. He'd lost everything trying to take everything from me. But I'd gained something far more valuable than money or property. I'd found a mission. Let's get to work, I said, turning back to the crowd of women. We have a lot of people to help. The signs waved in the afternoon sun. Financial abuse is real. Know your rights. Thank you, Sophia. Karma, it turned out, wasn't just about revenge. Sometimes it was about turning your worst moment into someone else's saving grace. And that's how the Women's Financial Protection Network was born, I concluded, facing the packed auditorium. From one woman's betrayal to a movement helping thousands. The applause was deafening. In the front row, Valeria gave me a thumbs up while Penelope wiped away tears. Questions? I asked, scanning the crowd. Dozens of hands shot up. I pointed to a woman in a red blazer. What happened to Peter? He took a plea deal, I said. Community service, financial restitution, and mandatory counseling. Last I heard, he's teaching business ethics at a community college. The irony drew knowing laughs. And Giselle? She had her baby, a beautiful boy who looks exactly like his actual father. She's working with our network now, helping identify warning signs of financial abuse. Another hand. How do you handle working with women whose stories are so similar to yours? I took a sip of water, considering. By remembering that revenge wasn't what healed me, this did. Every woman we help is a victory not just for her, but for all of us. After the presentation, I found Killian waiting backstage with coffee. Nailed it, sis, he said, handing me a cup, though you left out the part about Peter crying when they froze his gym membership. Some details are better left private, I laughed. How's Mom? Organizing another fundraiser with Yvonne. Those two are unstoppable together. He checked his phone. Speaking of which, Yvonne wants to know if you'll review their proposal for the Domestic Violence Shelter Partnership. Already did. It's brilliant. Valeria burst in, waving her tablet. Sophia, you need to see this. The governor just signed the Financial Fraud Protection Act we helped draft. It's official. Penelope appeared behind her. The news is calling it the Sophia Law. No way. I grabbed the tablet, reading quickly. They actually included all our recommendations, even the hidden asset registry. Every single one. Valeria beamed. Peter's case was the perfect example of why it was needed. Sometimes the best laws come from the worst situations. My phone buzzed. A text from Giselle. Just helped another woman find her husband's hidden accounts. She's safe now. Thank you for showing me how to make amends. Sophia, Penelope said softly, there's someone else here to see you. I looked up to see Marcus from Peter's old company standing in the doorway. The board voted this morning, he said without preamble. They want to make the network their official charitable partner. Full funding, corporate matching for employee donations, the works. That's Peter's old company, I said, stunned. Exactly. Marcus smiled. They think it's fitting that the company he tried to defraud helps prevent others from doing the same. Later that evening, I stood in my office at the network's headquarters, looking at the wall of success stories. Hundreds of photos of women who'd reclaimed their lives, their finances, their dignity. Quite a view, isn't it? I turned to find Yvonne in the doorway, leaning on her cane. I didn't hear you come in. I wanted to give you something, she said, pulling an envelope from her purse. Peter's trust fund finally matured. Yvonne, I don't want... It's not for you, she interrupted. I'm donating it to the network, all of it, $5 million to help other women fight back. I stared at the check, speechless. Consider it karma coming full circle, she said. My son tried to steal it to hurt you. Now it'll help heal others. The office door opened again as Valeria rushed in. Sorry to interrupt, but we have another case. Woman in Texas, husband's hiding cryptocurrency. She needs help now. I looked at the check in my hand, then at the wall of success stories, then at Yvonne's proud smile. Let's get to work, I said, reaching for my laptop. Tell her she's not alone anymore, because that's what revenge had taught me. Sometimes the best way to heal isn't to hurt back, but to help forward. Every woman we saved was a victory over every man like Peter. Every dollar we protected was a blow against financial abuse. Every story we changed was revenge, served not cold, but with purpose. You know what the best part is? I said to Yvonne as we walked to the conference room. Peter's actions created exactly what he feared most, a way for women to fight back. She patted my hand. That's not karma, dear. That's justice. And she was right. This wasn't the ending I'd expected when I first discovered Peter's betrayal. It was better. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't just winning, it's changing the game entirely. Ready? Valeria asked, opening the conference room door where our team waited. I smiled, thinking of all the women we'd help today, tomorrow, and every day after. Always ready. Let's change another life.